Hi guys, it's Broken Bexxy. I'm just a girl with a broken body who wants to make a positive difference in other people's lives while trying to live my best life. Today, for my story time, I thought I would tell you guys about the grey faces. Now, I don't know what other term to use to describe them. It's just been the way that I have always described them, because that's literally all they are. And I have to try and describe these grey faces, but it's really hard. Some people don't believe me, and that's okay. Other people do, but they haven't experienced it, and that's okay as well. But I'm going to do my best to describe them and the different times that I've seen them, or the more memorable times that I've seen them, because I see them quite a lot. There's no real consistency with it. It can be anywhere, anytime. It can be one or two, it can be multiple, and all of that. But there was one time where it was literally like a sea of all these grey faces. To try and describe them, like I said, is going to be really hard, and I'm not sure if people are going to understand what I'm meaning or what I'm trying to describe, but I am going to try and do my best with that. So basically all it is literally just a face. There's no body, there's no hair, there's no anything else. It's just a face. And it is like this saturation. You know when you take a photo and you take this, like, change the saturation so it just takes all color out of the photo, and it's just this grey hue, and it's like different shades of grey. And that is basically what these faces are like. They're all very different, these faces. Like, you get some that look similar and everything like that, but as a rule of thumb, they are all quite different. When I see them, it's sort of as if, to me, they just feel like I am walking down the street, or I'm in a room full of people, and I'll be seeing all these different people, all these different faces on all these different people, like anyone would in a social setting. Like, everybody has different faces, obviously, and some have similarities and some look nothing alike and everything. And when I'm in social situations, it doesn't have to be, it can also be when there's no one around that I see these, but when I'm in social situations, like, I'll see all these different faces of people, and then, like, in amongst that, I will see grey people. So, like, it's as if the saturation has been changed on this, on that particular face. And so there'll be normal face, grey face. It's like the transparency has been changed as well. So they're not, like, you can't see straight through them or anything like that. Like, they're more
solid.
I'm gonna go with solid because I can't think of anything else. They're more solid than just like being able to see straight through them, but they're not completely solid. So, like, they're not completely transparent, but then they're not completely solid either. They're just sort of like in between, where they're not quite, I don't know why it is every time I turn the camera on I can never think of any words. Actually, that's a lie. I can never think of any words anyway. So these faces you can't see completely through them, but they're not completely solid there either. I don't know why they make themselves known to me. I can be in a group of people and I can see all of these faces, extra faces there, and no one can see them either. And they sort of question my sanity a little bit, I think, because yeah, they're like, what are you talking about? I've never seen a grey face. I've never seen what you're describing. There's nothing else here. There's only the people that are in this room, not these extra things. Like obviously some people who have experienced different paranormal kind of stuff are more inclined to believe me. But there's a lot that don't. So, and honestly, like I haven't really heard any stories about these grey faces. So, like, if anyone has had an experience with a grey face or have heard of it and can show me some things about it, I would love to know. Because yeah, like I said, I don't really know anyone else who has experienced it, and sometimes I do feel like I'm going just a little bit crazy. There's not really any particular time except for once that was like absolutely insane, which I will get into in a little bit. But basically, it started happening when I was about 17ish, that I started to see these great faces, and it'd always be like one or two here and there, very intermittently. Like I'd see one and then I wouldn't see another one for months, and then I'd see one or two here and there, and then it would be months again until I saw anything again. And it wasn't until I was about 19, 20 that I started seeing them more regularly. Like, and I'm meaning like at least once a month sort of thing. I was seeing them, and it was becoming more and more regular. So it was like, instead of being like 6 months before seeing another one, it'd be like 3 months, and then it'd be like 2 months, and then 1 month, and then like weekly almost. And I'd be seeing more and more of them, but it was never more than like a handful that I'd see sort of spread out and everything, except for this one time. And I haven't experienced anything like it again. And it actually freaked me out, because like I didn't know what was going on. Like I didn't connect what was going on, if that makes sense. Hopefully it will. So what happened was, there was this big festival going on a few hours away from where I was living at the time, and a group of my friends and I were like, yep, we're going, we're gonna have the time of our lives. It was a 3-day festival. It was really cheap too. Like the tickets were like $50 for a 3-day camping ticket, and it was about 7 hours away from where we were living. So we decided we'd do a road trip, and I was excited because I had a new car and I was going to drive, and I love driving on road trips and stuff like that. Or I loved it, since being more chronically ill than what it was at that time. Traveling is quite difficult, especially if I'm driving. So I don't tend to drive for road trips anymore, which I do miss, because I used to love doing road trips on my own. But that's kind of irrelevant to this story, I guess. So we're all traveling, we're listening to music, we're having a blast. As we got closer, my friends started having a few drinks here and there, and we didn't get to the campsite until it was nighttime already. So we were trying to set up the campsite in the dark, and which was really interesting, and no one had like a pump for our air mattresses, so we had to do it like by our breath basically. And yeah, it was getting quite late by the time we had like got set up, had gotten there and all that sort of stuff, and we decided to go and check it out. One of my friends had been to these festivals before, but majority of our group hadn't been before. So once we set up our camp, we decided to go and check out everything. And it had stalls everywhere. It had like a big fire pit where you could just sit around and talk. It had so many different things like food stalls and clothing stalls and jewelry stalls, and like there were like tents for yoga and all this sort of stuff. So it was like a we call them bush stuffs, and it's basically like a hippie festival kind of thing. So like I don't really know how to describe it other than that, but it's really really fun and like one of my favorite things to do. I think I'd rather go to those kind of festivals than like bigger festivals. But so we're checking everything out, um and we went up to the stage, and they only had one stage because it wasn't ridiculously big, but it was like big enough that you were like there were people everywhere. You could talk to all these random people, like people from all over the world who were like backpacking in Australia and traveling around and all of that sort of stuff. And there was this one guy on stage when we got there, and he was absolutely incredible. He was like, I don't know how to describe it, but he was playing the didgeridoo, and he was like playing all these songs, and it doesn't sound that impressive, I guess, when you just say didgeridoo, but he was playing like different instruments as well, and like doing things like making sounds with that didgeridoo that I never expected to come out of a didgeridoo. And he was incredible. Like it was so much fun. Anyway, because I had driven the night, no, 7 hours, but it took longer because of roadworks and all sorts of stuff. And this was a time where my chronic illnesses were really starting to have an effect on me, but I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know about chronic illnesses or anything like that. So I was exhausted. And I was like, no, I don't want to drink tonight because then I won't be able to have drinks and stuff the next night because I'll be feeling too sick and all of that sort of stuff. So I decided like I would just enjoy the night as it was, go to bed relatively early, like midnight, 1 o'clock, whatever it was. And then the next night, like I would actually have some fun and all of that. I didn't want to ruin the rest of the weekend by going like having drinks and dancing all night and everything the first night when I was already feeling so tired, and I was at a point with my illness, like if I didn't, like obviously now it's the same that like if I don't rest when I need to rest, I'm out for the count for days. So like if I had have made that decision to drink and dance and everything all night, that first night I wouldn't have been able to enjoy the rest of the weekend. So I went to bed again around midnight, 1 o'clock, whatever it was, and everybody else had sort of decided that they were going to have a relatively quiet night the first night as well because they wanted to have an absolute ball the next night and they didn't want anything to ruin that by being too crazy on the first night. And so, and it seemed like a lot of the festival were kind of like that as well. So it would have been about 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a bit later. I had woken up and I needed to, what did I need to do? I needed water or something like that, and I didn't have any left in my tent. So I went out to the esky to try and get some. And when I got out of the tent, it was quiet. I could hear the music, but then there was like
this noise, and it was like I don't know how to describe it.
it was all like one tone, and I couldn't make out like if it was actually any kind of noise in particular, if that makes sense. Um, and it was like quiet and it sounded far away but so close. And I sort of like got up out of the tent and then like came face to face with this face, and I was like, oh, sorry. And then turned to walk around it and then ran into another face, and I was like, oh, sorry. And then like did that a couple of times, and then I like sort of had woken up a little bit better, and I looked around and I'd seen the faces that I'd just run into, but they didn't have bodies and they were grey. And I was like, okay, there's like 3 or 4 right around me that I've just run into. And then like I looked up a little bit more, and as my eyes sort of adjusted, because it was like it wasn't pitch black at all. Like it was dark, but you could still see well enough to be able to make out everything. So I think the moon, it must have been like close to a full moon or something, because it was bright from the moon. And you could see like the different campsites all around, and you could see like every little thing sort of thing, but it was dark. But as I looked around, I was noticing more and more of these faces, these grey faces. There were no bodies, there were just these grey faces, and they were coming. Once they sort of saw that I had acknowledged them, they started coming towards me. And so the faces that I could see in the immediate like surroundings, they were all coming closer, but then I was seeing like more and more faces coming from further away that were just a bit too far away for me to be able to make out, that were out far. They started coming in closer, and it became like this wall surrounding me. There were so many different faces, and like I couldn't touch them or anything like that, but I could feel them around me. And the noise that I was hearing had turned into distinct whispering, but there were way too many voices whispering all at the same time to be able to make out what any of them were saying. But all of these faces, they were all whispering at me. And the faces around me became so thick that I could literally not make out anything else around them, like past them. They were all surrounding me. I'll try and turn around, I'd try and keep walking, but I couldn't, because I could feel them just all closing in on me, and they were getting, the whispering was getting louder and louder, and I still couldn't make out anything that they were saying, because as more and more faces came, the more whispering there was. So it was even harder to hear, but it was deafening. And I didn't know what to do. I was like, I can't, I, I, I I'm one, stuck here because they're all surrounding me, and two, like I can't understand them. They're trying to say something to me, but I can't understand them at all. And I said that to them. I'm like, I can't understand you. Like, what is going on? What do you want? Like, you obviously want something because you're coming towards me and you're trying to tell me something, but I can't understand it. And it just got too much. It got too overwhelming because there were hundreds of these faces that were surrounding me, and I had never ever experienced so many. Like I said earlier, the most I'd experienced seeing at any given time were like a handful, and they were always spread out. I'd never heard the whispering before, but I'd seen the faces and I knew that they meant no harm, and that they were just there. They were just existing. And so when I saw so many, I was like, what is going on? Where am I, for one? How, like, why are there so many in this one spot? And two, like, there's too many for me to comprehend. There's too many for me to understand. And I was overwhelmed. So I, like, slowly, because they wouldn't, it's not that they wouldn't let me, but it was like I felt like I couldn't move because I would run into them, but they couldn't touch me or anything like that. But it was just like a wall that they had surrounded me. It wasn't that they were trying, I never felt like they were trying to keep me in this spot. It was just that they wanted to be heard, but I couldn't understand them and I was feeling overwhelmed. So I needed to move, and they sort of moved with me until I got back to my tent. And because I had taken quite a few steps, like trying to get past them when I initially ran into those couple. So like it took a little bit to get back those few steps back to the tent. Second I closed the tent though, they were gone. I could hear faint whispering, but the faces were all gone. It was like the tent had like kept them out or something. And I could kind of hear this ring, but it was like further away. So, and it didn't sound as many. So it was sort of like they dispersed again once they realized that I was gone or whatever. The next day, I'd see faces here and there, but nothing like what I had seen the night before. And then as the day and then the night went on, I had started drinking during the day, and then like as the night got on, the more alcohol I had, the less I saw of them. So that night I didn't have the same experience or anything like that. So I don't know whether the alcohol sort of drowned them out, or whether they didn't want anything to do with me because I was drinking, or what it was. But that was, that first night was the most intense, and that was years ago now. That was like 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And I still have never experienced anything like that. I still see the grey faces from time to time, like here and there, and all of that sort of stuff. Um, it has seemed to change. I'm not seeing the grey faces as much as what I used to, but I do still see them. But I do also see people more. So actual people, head, body, arms, legs, toes, all of that. I see more solid people that aren't actually there than what I used to. So like when I was seeing the grey faces, it was sort of like I would see them, but I wouldn't see people. But now I see actual people and I don't really see the grey faces. So I don't know whether it's um, evolved to actual people from grey faces, or whether the grey faces have taken a step back and these other ones are being shown to me, or what it is. So yeah, that is the story of the grey faces. Um, and it still trips me out to think about that experience because it was so
weird.
I wasn't scared or anything like that, but it was very confronting and very overwhelming, and not really sure. I wasn't really sure what to do with that information. And I've been to more of those festivals since, even in the same spot, and nothing like that has ever happened again. So I don't know what it was about that particular night, but it was interesting to say the least. Hi guys, it's Broken Bexxy, and I'm just editing a video finally, and the outro I had recorded for this particular video was out of date because I filmed it a while ago, and I just haven't had time to edit any videos for quite a while. I've had some adjustments in my life I've had to make and try and get used to it all again. So I have been recording videos, I just haven't had the time to edit them, so I'm going to be working on that over the next few weeks so that I can at least be uploading again and hopefully be a bit ahead with my filming and my editing so that I don't have to go without again. But yeah, I just wanted to record a little update to let you guys know what's been happening, and also that at this stage 2 videos a week is just not going to happen with me, not with everything else that's going on. So it's just going to be 1 video a week. I'm not really setting a day because I was putting a lot of pressure on myself that I didn't need at all. And yeah, I hope to go back to set days eventually, but right now I just need to be, I just want to be uploading when I can, and I don't want to be sort of restricted to particular times and all of that when everything's so hectic at the moment. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you like my content, then press that subscribe button and hit the bell notification so that you're notified whenever I post, and I will see you next time.